Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, we filmed a video about SRAM versus Shimano mountain bike brakes. My phone's ringing.
You hear my phone ring?
Ladies and gentlemen, about 2 years ago, we filmed a video of SRAM versus Shimano mountain bike brakes. A lot of people really liked that video. It got a ton of views, but looking back at it, one thing's clear, my hair is still ridiculous. I still need a haircut. It was also a ramble-on video in my opinion, so we have the goal today to film a much more comprehensive video comparing SRAM and Shimano mountain bike brakes and include all sorts of good, useful information for you. In this video, we are going to cover the feel and modulation of each brand, models per riding discipline, price and feature comparison between the two brands, mechanic friendliness, dot fluid versus mineral oil, what sucks and what's good about each brand, and my personal preference. The thing I talked about the most in the last video we made on this topic, and probably what you've already heard a lot when you're comparing these two brakes, does have to do with feel, or what some people call modulation. There is a decent difference between the two brands. They both have a little bit of their own unique feel. So typically, what you're gonna hear right there, the general consensus is that SRAM has a little bit more modulation or sponginess to it. What that means is as you're pulling the lever, once it actually finally contacts, the amount of sort of give and sponge right there before the brake locks up, that is quote unquote modulation. SRAMs tend to have a little bit more of that, a little bit more sponge, a little bit more play and distance in the lever throw that you can kind of modulate the brake before it completely locks up. Shimano has a little bit less. They're a bit snappier in feel. So you have less room by the time you feel it contact. There's sort of less distance in that lever, and then the brake just locks the wheel up. Is one better than the other? I'm gonna definitely say no. So it's kind of personal preference, and to be honest, you can kind of get used to either one. I've ridden both of them extensively over the history of my mountain bike career, and you just kind of get used to it. It is different, but you definitely get used to it. SRAM brakes have gotten a little bit more snappy, and we're talking modern SRAM brakes are definitely more snappy and have a little bit less modulation than the older SRAM brakes do. Shimano's have kind of always been really snappy, and they still remain that same feel, but that's kind of the difference. What are you gonna like?
You! Yes? Not you, him!
Well, it's kind of interesting. I have seen customers walk into our shop that got a new set of SRAM brakes, or they just rode a demo bike that had SRAM brakes on it, and they came in and they were glowing, and they're like, I absolutely love these brakes. I'm not locking up the wheel by mistake. I'm not accidentally skidding. I get thrown over the bars on my bike by accident. With my Shimano brakes, these SRAM brakes have so much more modulation. I love them. So some people say that. I've heard that a dozen times. I've also heard a dozen times, I hate the SRAM brakes, they're too spongy, it's like too hard to lock the wheel up, my Shimano ones are way snappier, way more predictable, blah, blah, blah. So there is no one winner. They just have a little bit different feel between them, and it kind of is personal preference and what you like. So in a perfect world, you'd be able to test both brakes back to back and see which one you kind of like and prefer, but there's definitely no one winner. But the consensus is SRAM is a little bit more modulation sponginess, and Shimano is a little bit more snappy and tight. Both SRAM and Shimano make a ton of different models of brakes. I'm just going to talk about the most popular and kind of like the top 3 nicest ones in the mountain bike realm from each brand. I'm gonna break it down in cross-country / light trail as one category, trail / enduro, and enduro / downhill. Disclaimer, you can obviously affix any of these brakes across different disciplines. So you might have a cross-country bike that has 100 mil of travel and it's a super lightweight hardtail, but you're a really big, dude, so you put downhill brakes on it. That is possible. And vice versa. But what they're intended for, that's what I'm gonna go over. So each brand does it a little bit differently. To preface this, do remember, 4-piston brake caliper is more powerful than a 2-piston brake caliper. It's also a little bit heavier. Also, all of these brake models that I'm gonna talk about, you can put a bunch of different size rotors on them. Smaller rotors have less leverage, less braking power. Larger rotors have more leverage, more braking power. So, to jump into it, Shimano, cross-country light trail. They make XTR, XT, and SLX, right? XTR being the most expensive, then XT, then SLX. That's their top 3 premium mountain bike models. 2 piston brakes variants for those 3 models. SRAM has what's called the Level series. So they have Level Ultimate, TLM, TL, T, and just Level. So that's SRAM's cross-country light trail 2-piston caliper lightweight brake. Trail and enduro. So with Shimano, again, XTR, XT, SLX, 4-piston. So 4-piston for each one of those models. SRAM has the G2s, the nicest being G2 Ultimate, then RSC, RS, and R. Enduro / downhill riding, Shimano's got the Saint and the Z. SRAM has the Code series, Code RSC and Code R. Again, it is possible to put what SRAM might consider a downhill brake, like a Code, on your cross-country bike, or Shimano might make their downhill brake, which is the Saint or a Z. You could put it on a trail bike or a cross-country bike. They're all cross-compatible in terms of that sort of stuff. Different personal preference, but what I just went over is the intended discipline for them. If you ever have any questions about what brakes you might need and what fits your bike and you as a rider, your weight, your riding style, your terrain, all that sort of stuff, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're versed in this stuff very well. We talk about brakes constantly. So little disclaimer there. It is complicated, but what I just went over was the intended discipline from the brand for each one of those available models. In the cross-country / light trail category, from the top-end model first, Shimano XTR 2-piston versus SRAM's Level Ultimate. Shimano coming in at $299 per brake, tool-required reach adjustment, no free-stroke adjustment, and claimed weight of 312 grams per brake for lever, caliper, and hose. The SRAM Level Ultimate coming in at $265 per brake, tool-required reach adjust, no free-stroke adjustment, and claimed weight of 255 grams per brake for lever, caliper, and hose. And now for the XT 2-piston versus the Level TLM. And the SLX 2-piston versus the Level TL. And now, a comedy brake.
So how do you like those spongy SRAM brakes?
Spongy? It's called modulation. At least it doesn't do what those things do. Nothing, nothing, nothing. Lock.
Well, I had a pair of elixirs and those things sucked.
Oh, yeah? Well, you haven't tried any new ones. How about that Phillips head screwdriver knob on those Shimano brakes that doesn't do anything? Back to the show in the trail / enduro category, Shimano coming in with XTR 4-piston versus SRAM G2 Ultimates. And now XT 4-piston versus G2 RSC. And now, SLX 4-piston versus G2 RS. And now, some laughter.
One time I put a firefly in my butthole
Why?
to make my farts glow.
Oh, God.
And for the final category of enduro / downhill, Shimano coming in with Saints versus SRAM's Code RSC. And now, Z versus Code R. The way you bleed SRAM versus Shimano is a little bit different. So Shimano uses this sort of funnel system, whereas SRAM uses a syringe system. They're both challenging to bleed, and it is probably recommended that you have a professional do it, or check out Park Tools' YouTube channel if you really want to tackle it yourself. Make sure you have proper tools, proper bleed kit, eye protection, gloves, all that good stuff. I would say, in my experience, it's a little bit easier to get Shimano's to feel good in terms of just like if you're quasi-novice mechanic and you're at home working on them, SRAM takes a little bit more skill to get really dialed in and perfect, but it's kind of more convenient and clean to bleed them with the syringe system. So both are kind of similar there. In terms of adjusting the actual calipers, historically, SRAM has not been the best at that. Their pistons didn't retract quite as good as Shimano. They have come a very, very long way there with their caliper design and the piston material and the piston seals. In modern day, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, if you've worked on them extensively, new stuff like in the last couple years, the SRAM pistons retract amazingly well, just like the Shimanos always have. So they're just as easy to adjust and make sure that that rotor is not rubbing. A lot of people still have that old memory of older SRAM brakes where their pistons didn't retract as well, and it was back then, it was really annoying. 6-7 years ago, SRAM/Avid brakes were a lot harder to dial in and get that rotor to not rub because the pistons just, like, no matter what you did, just didn't seem to want to retract. And Shimano's 6-7 years ago, 10 years ago, the pistons always retracted really well, and they still do. But nowadays, I think they're totally equal in that sense. So that's a little touch on mechanic friendliness. Now let's talk about what's inside of these things. SRAM brakes all use dot fluid, and all of Shimano's brakes use their proprietary mineral oil. Which one is better? Really tough to say. There's a lot of controversy over that topic, over which fluid really is better. There's an article written by this company in Europe called Epic Bleed Solutions. A link below to that in the video description. They wrote an extensive article all about dot fluid versus mineral oil, which is really, really well done. You can see a couple snippets of that article and pros and cons of each of the fluid right now. At the bottom of that article, they don't really say themselves which one is better because it's kind of hard to say which one really is better. They just both have their own pros and cons. At the bottom of that article, they do have a poll where you can vote on which one you think is better. And at the time of filming, that poll had 10,300 votes, and 61% of people that voted said mineral oil was better. So if you really want to get nerdy on that topic, definitely check out the link below in the video description to Epic Bleed Solutions. Their article is amazing when you're talking mineral oil versus dot fluid. All the brakes from SRAM and Shimano work incredibly well. I mean, there's a reason why these two brands are pretty much the dominant mountain bike brake brands in the entire mountain bike industry, at least in North America. There's obviously a ton of other great brakes out there. TRP, Hope, Magura, just to name a few. There's a bunch of other ones out there, but these guys are kind of the two big gorillas in the ring because they make really great stuff and they get a lot of spec. So what are some things that I still think is, good and bad from each brand? One of my biggest gripes, and you'll probably hear this from a lot of people, especially if you're doing some Googling on Shimano brakes, they have their free stroke adjustment, and that's supposed to be, how far that lever pulls until it actually engages. A really, really nice thing to be able to adjust. Shimano's requires a tool, and the tool is a Phillips head screwdriver. A Phillips head screwdriver?
What the hell?
On a $300 brake? I don't know, that always just seems stupid. Why isn't it an Allen wrench, and why do you need a tool to adjust it? It just looks ugly to me. And the other thing is, it kind of doesn't really work. I don't know anyone who rides Shimano brakes who ever actually really messes with that thing. It doesn't really seem to do very much. It barely changes it. And if you have the thing driven all the way out, you have all these exposed threads and it looks super ugly. So I don't know. That to me has been a gripe of mine about Shimano brakes for a long time, because that's a really nice, valuable adjustment to have. That's part of what put Avid, prior before it was SRAM, onto the scene, as they came out with a tool-free free stroke adjustment that was really nice and actually worked. That's kind of what put them on the map. And then this was Shimano's answer to it. This was years ago. Still kind of sucks. Still is not that good. Still is a Phillips head screwdriver instead of an Allen, and you still need some kind of tool. SRAMs, on the other hand, they call it a contact point adjustment, but same exact thing. It's basically this little rolly dial here, and you can twist the thing around and it determines how far that lever pulls before it engages. It actually works, and it works really, really well. Between all the way on and all the way off, or all the way one direction and the other, it makes a huge difference in how far the lever actually pulls until it engages, so you have a ton of adjustment there to dial in that on your brake, on the fly, with no tool. It's awesome. When they first came out with this feature 3 to 5 years ago, they'd get locked up sometimes and they would get stuck, and that was kind of annoying. Some of you guys may have had that problem, but it doesn't really do it anymore. I haven't seen that happen in forever. I love that. Another thing I love about the SRAM brakes is you can flip-flop them. They are the same either direction, so if you're a moto guy, or say your buddy comes over and you're an American and he's Australian and he wants his rear brake on the left side and he's riding your spare bike, you can just take your SRAM brakes and flip the levers really easy.
What the? See, that's the type of... I'm gonna kick your ass.
Shimanos don't do that. They're directional, so that's kind of annoying. But yeah, I mean, Shimano makes a beautiful, gorgeous brake that is, you know, does work really well and has a great snappy feel. So I don't know, that's some of just like the rambling ons of, you know, what sucks and what's good on both of these things. But at the end of the day, both brands make amazing brakes, which is why they're so popular in the industry. I prefer SRAM brakes. I have for probably the last 4 years. I think SRAM brakes have come a really long way. And to me, I absolutely love that what Shimano calls free stroke and SRAM calls contact point, that adjustment, how far that lever pulls until it engages. I kind of mess with that a lot because I really like them to feel exactly the same and how far they pull. All hydraulic brakes, depending on, you know, how you bleed them and all these other little tiny variables inside, it's almost impossible to get them like perfectly even, and then like your brain might not think they're even, but having like on the fly, tool free, being able to adjust that contact, how far that lever goes until it engages, I love it. I really like SRAM brakes. That is my preference. This is my personal bike right here. G2 Ultimates with the little rainbow hardware, carbon lever blades. I absolutely love these things. I've definitely been on the SRAM brake train for a long time, and that's just my preference. Not to say that Shimano's bad in any way, shape, or form. I just prefer that. I also like a little bit more modulation of the SRAM as well. But yeah, I mean, it's split down the middle. There's, you know, in terms of our shop, I would say it's probably weighted more towards people who do prefer and like SRAM brakes, but of course there's, you know, a percentage of people, you know, in our company that are diehard Shimano brake people. And it's a tough one, right? Because every year that goes by, Shimano makes improvements to their brakes, SRAM makes improvements to their brakes, things change, things get different, but, you know, they're neck and neck right now. My preference is still SRAM. I really enjoy their brakes. Thank you guys very much for watching. I really hope that that was a valuable and helpful video for you if you are comparing these two brake brands. Definitely let us know down in the comments what brakes are you running. Super curious to hear your thoughts and your opinions and experiences with both brands. Or if you prefer another brand, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more epic mountain bike content like this. I'll see you guys in the next video.